Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. I am your wonderful host, or not so wonderful host, depending on how you look at me, Redbeard. I greatly appreciate everybody stopping in this evening, taking an opportunity to come by, to watch, to hear what we have to say, whether you agree with us or disagree with us. It's always greatly appreciated to have everybody here tonight. So a little bit of housekeeping. I am trying to still get a few things worked on. I'm hoping to try and get Sean and Blake back for a segment that I really wanted to do that we kind of left off on in our previous conversation with those two. So it just takes time. You know, you got to try and work schedules out and do all that good stuff. But we're getting there slowly but surely. And I'm working on a few other episodes as well. So stay tuned for that. On my last episode, I also did post my Instagram, where you can find updates and all of that type of information that I put on the Instagram there. So you can always stay kind of abreast of everything that's going on with the podcast, the upcoming shows, et cetera, et cetera. And it gives you an opportunity, if you're able to find it, to leave some comments, even provide some show ideas, and let me know what you guys kind of want to hear us talk about on Sentinels of Liberty. So that's basically all I have for now for housekeeping. I'm going to introduce, in my mind, the great Tom Eddlem. He is a fellow at the Libertarian Institute, and I really am super happy to have you back, man. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Oh, hey, thanks a lot, Redbeard. It's good to be back. It's hard to call you the Redbeard, but that's okay. No, Jeremy, it's good to be back, and of course, this is great practice for me because I keep telling everybody I know I'm going to create a podcast. I am, and it's going to. As it turns out, I can't do the Blue Collar Economist podcast because that name is already taken, actually, by someone who did a pretty good job, even though it's inactive right now. So okay. I'm gonna have to rename it when I start it, which will be soon, and then I'll be promoting it here, I hope. So, but yeah, that's most of my writing is at the Libertarian Institute. I do some blogging with the Massachusetts Libertarian Party. In fact, I had a piece go up just 2 nights ago about why you should join the Libertarian Party now. I am a member of the Libertarian Party. Sorry for the rest of you who are not. I'm not that. I'm not that kind of libertarian. I promise you. No, but I think what we see with the big beautiful bill is evidence of why we might need a third party option, a viable third party option going forward. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the big beautiful bill tonight, so there we go. Anyway, I've run my mouth a little bit with my introduction, so there we go.
Yeah. No, it's great, man. And definitely, like, once you get everything set up and established, I will happily try and usher as many people as I can over to you, because you have a lot of really good insights, great information, and you bring up a lot of really good topics, and I think it's very relevant and contemporary to today. And so I'm really looking forward to that personally myself, just to be able to go over and see everything that you're going to be doing there. So when you get that set up, we will push it as much as we possibly can and get as many people over there as we can to help support you. So,
well, you are a king, I say, on No King's Day. Let me tell you. And as a Catholic, I can tell you, I am not only a king but also a priest and a prophet, and I have the baptismal certificate to prove it. That's all I'm saying.
That's
there's No King's Day, but we should probably talk a little bit about the protests, which I guess have not gone as well as they had hoped today.
You don't say.
I can't imagine why. They may not have given out enough free stuff. I'm not sure.
Oh no.
So
is Soros and company running out of money? Are they slipping, or what's going on?
I think not enough people knew about it because it was only broadcast on CNN, MSNBC, NPR, PBS, and the New York Times and the Washington Post, and every establishment medium. So probably nobody knew about it. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Because who watches that stuff anymore? And hardly anybody, right?
Well, I mean, in a very serious manner, yeah. I mean, if you really look at a lot of these places, the ratings are abysmal. And I remember hearing, I listened to an episode of Dave Smith's. He actually did a couple episodes on Part of the Problem, and he had mentioned this for a couple weeks in a row, and he's just like, dude, he's like, they can't compete. He's like, the way of the future is going to be podcasting. It's going to be doing these, these formats that allow you to just freely be able to reach out to people. And a lot of that's just because so much of it is, it's not controlled. People can actually kind of, and not controlled in the manner of like, if you have an idea, you can go forth and espouse that idea and talk about topics that maybe either cliche or maybe they're very taboo, but you have the ability to reach so many people. And in a way, it does kind of become one of those things to where, like in embracing the Ron Paul disposition of like free markets and allowing the market to decide, like that, it is the greatest way for the market to decide. And I think what we're seeing, Tom, is the market deciding that the legacy media, the mainstream way of doing things is dying. It's a dinosaur. And I think the way that we're attempting to format and get ourselves on platforms and all of that, I think that's going to be the way ahead. And so, I mean, it is actually surprising, when we talk about the protests, and even if we look back at 2020 with all the BLM stuff, I mean, it is surprising to me, knock on wood, that we haven't seen to some degree quite the breadth that I think a lot of people were expecting. That being said, though, I do remember when all of the BLM rioting did start. Oh, when that sun went down, things started to turn up. So I'm still kind of skeptical, because it's like, okay, like what is going to happen once night comes? What is going to happen once we start getting a little bit later into the day, into tomorrow, et cetera, et cetera? Is it going to be one of those things so where it just ramps right up out of completely nowhere? Because it's not beyond possibility, right, Tom? I mean, we've seen this pattern before, and usually when it does happen, they're brought in, they're well funded, they happen to just have pallets of bricks and tools just available. It's like somebody went to the Lowe's and bought out all of their bricks or whatever. It's crazy. So, what do you have to say on that?
Well, I think that's true. I don't think there's anything that's stopping it from getting out of hands, even though, ordinarily I would say, yeah, but tomorrow's a work day. But of course, most of the people going to these rallies are not going to work. They're not going to be working. So right. I think that's true. And it's also true. The legacy media is dying. I mean, I saw in someone's house for the first time in years a copy of the Boston Globe.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wait a minute, a physical copy of a newspaper? I just, I couldn't believe it.
You have to frame it, dude.
And of course, I'm older, but I remember as a kid going around the neighborhood. Now, this is pre-internet, and 2 out of 3 houses would get the Boston Globe. They had a circulation well in excess of 600,000 in the Boston area. And there was also the Boston Herald. So, between the two of them, it was probably close to 1 million. And almost every house got a newspaper, a daily newspaper. And if they didn't get the daily, they at least got the Sunday. And that's not the case anymore. Maybe somebody goes to the website once a week or something, but it's not anywhere near what it used to be. And it's because of the consistent lies that they've been telling. They lose audience. And whereas Joe Rogan does not lie to us. I mean, he may tell you, I don't know, I'm guessing, but the difference is he's not actively lying to us. And I think that's important. And that's why the podcasts are gaining in audience. Yeah. I do think that there is a news function, a news show function that will be preserved, but it'll look different. Sure, it's not it's not ONN or anything like that, but it's going to look something like ONN or Newsmax, which those started out as podcasts basically.
Yes. Yep.
And now they've transformed. But I think there will be news, like, because I was finding myself just day before last when the missiles started going down in Iran.
Yeah.
Hey, what's happening? What's happening? I don't know.
Right.
Where do I go? I mean, I happen not to be near a television, so I couldn't turn on the usual networks. And I just went to a podcast and okay, I'll look at this. I'll look at this. But I mean, that's what people are going to be doing. They're not going to be just turning on the television, because a lot of times they're not going to be near a TV, and they're going to get used to not turning on those networks.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. It's I think what the shift is going to be, and ultimately, kind of like you pointed out, what that amalgamation of I guess what's kind of left, that husk of the legacy media, kind of yet remains to be seen. I think it's slowly starting to come together, and I'm interested to see if like what that becomes is really going to be anything enough to still garner any worthwhile viewership, or if honestly like it goes strong for maybe like another decade and it just kind of fizzles and pops, and that's the end of it. I mean, because some of them really are trying to they are really trying to hold on, and I think some of them are almost kind of in denial of just like, no, like our ratings are fine. It's like, yeah, you and your like 600,000 people that are watching your station, and it's
That's
like,
right.
dude, like how are you even keeping the lights on right now? Like you have huge studios, and it's like, I get they have like donors and people that support them, but it's like at some point, like those ratings, man, they got to be there, because those ratings are money to them. So
yeah, it's a combination of two things that have sustained them so far.
yeah,
One, it's the cable fees. Anyone who gets subscribes to cable television pays a
yep,
certain fee, and then they get an access to that. So that's what's sustaining Fox, even though Fox
sure,
has the biggest new viewership. And the other
yeah,
thing is advertisers. If you turn on any TV network today, you'll notice a real pattern of who's advertising.
yeah,
And it's a combination of military contractors. So they're the weakest. Like there's
yeah,
not that many of them, but there's a few. The big support is big pharma.
yeah,
Almost
absolutely,
every single one is, hey, we've got a cure for your, for your whatever your ailment is. Better
yeah,
take PrEP if you're gay. You better take, I've got fibromyalgia or whatever. Okay,
right,
those,
yeah,
and it's kind of a perfect fit for the legacy media, because
yeah,
they promote the ideas of big pharma, and then they take the ads from
right,
big pharma, and it's
yeah,
perfect. And then the last one is really what reveals the demographic that's still subscribing to cable and watching cable TV. And it's like walk-in showers, supplementary Medicare,
oh
and
yeah,
all of these,
yep,
all of these products for the end of life person. And
yep,
because their viewership is literally dying off. I mean, it's north of 65 for the most part that are
right.
still watching this,
I
and that's it.
it's wild that you bring that up, because it's still um oh god, like it's still amazing to me like how seemingly mainstream, like you still get the AARP, or like some form of like ARP companies like just really pushing it, just like, dude, like you're like, like how are you still like just going, it's crazy, because but at the same time you're not wrong, because it's like, yeah, like your average viewer probably on cable television is like north of that 65, and they probably have nothing better to do if they're not out in the garden, or if they're not out like doing certain things, right? Like they are sitting down and they're watching TV over lunch or something like that. And so and I do remember, and I don't think there could be, but I don't think there's as much of a disparity when it comes to like programming as there used to be some years ago, to where like you had your night programming, and then you had your morning programming, and then your during the day programming. And now it just seems like it just all blends together. Like
Yeah, it
I
does.
never in my mind did you ever see like this continuous like news cycle, right? Like now they're on to like this 24-hour news cycle. Some of it is supplemented by like online viewership, of course, but back in the day, like once you hit a certain threshold, you just got recycled news hours, right? So like if you watched, say, like Bret Baier at like 5 o'clock at night, by 12 o'clock, you were seeing that same segment air again because they didn't do anything else. And now it just seems like it's like, no, you know what we're going to do? Like, we're just going to keep going. And like, hopefully like there's going to be enough like chaos in the world or whatever for us to be able to report on. So it's wild. Like I think they're really working hard to try and maintain what little they actually have left before that dying gasp of air.
Well, I was tooling around on Rumble, which is one of the big podcasting platforms, one of the least censored ones these days, or actually one of the probably the only one that isn't at all censored. Mm-hmm. And Alex Jones has a 24-hour station. I was like, really? And that
actually doesn't surprise me, but yeah,
I mean, he has a lot of people working for him and has for a number of years. So it's not always full content, but I think that's the trend going forward. I think there will be, even if there's not 24-hour networks, perhaps there will be alliances among podcasters.
Sure.
Hey, I'll do it this hour, you do it the next hour, you do it the next hour, whatever, and they get along that way. I mean, there's all kinds of ways they could combine efforts and combine resources without actually combining, just through voluntary action. So there's any number of ways this could go media wise.
Oh, 100%.
The media's what's the word? The media universe is in a huge flux right now, and it's not going to stop fluctuating.
No. Right.
And part of it is because, well, government's regulating certain blocks still, and the flow is away from whatever that is. So the flow is away, even though YouTube still is the biggest, the flow is away from YouTube because it's the most likely platform to censor. But there are other platforms that also censor just less than YouTube, and the flow is medium there. And then the biggest flow is to Rumble, but it's still fairly small. Also to X, because X is now it's always been a big platform, but it's one of the least censored, certainly on certain issues. And whereas you go back to 2020, or even just a few years before, just X itself, before Elon Musk bought it. If you said, I mean, my wife and I, we got into this old TV series called Goliath. It's an Amazon Prime series, pretty good. Billy Bob Thornton, and he plays a lawyer or whatever. And it's kind of like a Michael Crichton movie. It's like The Firm or whatever. And in the second season, there's a woman judge, and I said to her, "That's a man," and it was it's a guy who's transgender, and who is required to be called a woman was required to be called a woman on X until Elon Musk took over, and that not anymore. Now there are other places where you do that, and it's like, nope, they're not going to do that. We're not going to allow it. So you can't dead name someone or whatever. You can't call him Bruce Jenner anymore. It has to be Caitlyn Jenner. You can't do any of that stuff. So, yeah.
Such is the way of the world, apparently. At least at this juncture. Tomorrow could be different,
No, I know. Yeah, but I mean, you could get banned on a lot of platforms for saying the decathlete, formerly known as Bruce Jenner.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through a couple things here. I'm going to go through some comments here quick. Chuck, thanks for coming in, man. Greatly appreciate it. Always love having you. Mark over at Centerline Systems, really appreciate you stopping in. And I saw, let's see here, Gene from across the pond from the UK is in the house. Welcome back, Gene. It's always great to have you. By the way, Gene is also our resident all-nighter. The man runs off of, I think, just pure adrenaline and caffeine. Some of the podcasts that I've been on that he's been in, we're like, Gene, like how late is it? Where you're at, and he's like, oh, it's only like 5 a.m. It's like, you've been up the whole time, like what the heck, man? But greatly
he's a third shifter hero. He's a third shifter hero,
dude.
You know?
Absolutely. So big props to Eugene. Thanks for coming in. Also Mark from Centerline Systems. Tom, you're back. We're great. We're so happy to have you back. So
good.
And then Chuck also had a comment, and I think Mark at Centerline also did, but we'll start with Chuck first. What are your thoughts on Mike Termat and the RLC? I think I don't know if I ever can pronounce his name right, but
you did. Mike Termat that's his name. You pronounced it right. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's funny because I was saying at the beginning that I occasionally blog for the Massachusetts Libertarian Party, and I start off with a comment about Mike Termat because he was the Libertarian Party vice presidential candidate in 2024. And he recently moved to the Republican Liberty Caucus. And I said, I wish him well. You know, I mean, I had gone to the Libertarian National Convention, and he had kind of convinced me to back him at the convention. I had known him since Reno. I met him at Reno in 2022. That we had a national convention then. And he said, oh, I'm a Mises guy. I mean, I'm this and that, whatever. But, he just sounded reasonable. And he'd come from Republican Party politics, but so had I in the 90s. And we were about the same age. And at the convention, he formed an alliance with Chase Oliver. And I was like, what a betrayal. I looking back at it, there weren't that many even good choices at the convention. I mean, there were a couple of guys that I wish I'd backed instead. But I don't know. But anyway, he went over to back to the Republicans, basically. And his view is, I'm going to make sure government doesn't get bigger by joining the Republicans. And I've done that, and it didn't work. And you could argue, well, the Libertarian Party hasn't stopped big government either. I mean, if your argument is you haven't stopped it, well, that works everywhere, right? Because nobody has stopped it. Nobody has stopped it. The Republicans haven't stopped it. Certainly the Democrats haven't even tried. And the Republicans haven't really even tried now that I mention it. I mean, to a certain extent, the Republicans are worse when it comes to big government than the Democrats, because when the Democrats are in power, they say big government is good. And the Republicans say that's not right. But when the Republicans are in charge and they say big government is good, Democrats say that's not enough. And that's the motivation. It's more or even more. Whereas with the Democrats, it's more or less, and you don't go up as much. So I think he's got a big road to hoe. I really thought, I was thinking of rejoining the Libertarian Party. I'd been independent since the mid 90s. Back in 2010, 2012, when Rand Paul won and Justin Amash won and Thomas Massey won, and they all went into Congress. Excuse me. And I thought, gee, this whole pushing liberty Republicans in the Republican Party, it's got momentum. It's got, Ron Paul came very close in 2012 to winning a few primaries and being a serious contender. I thought, maybe there's something to this. But since then, what has happened? Justin Amash got pushed out of the party, basically. And he went to the Libertarians, and then he went back to the Republicans, and now I think he's back in the Libertarians or whatever. Right. I mean, I'm not a party loyalist in that sense, in the sense that, you're a bad person if you're in the wrong party. Yeah. you're a bad person if you push big government. That's about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the idea, right now what's the mood in the Republican Party, Liberty Republicans? Well, the president of the United States, who's a Republican, has called for primarying Thomas Massie, and he's been attacking Rand Paul. So all the momentum is away from the Republican Party being able to do things.
Yeah.
And so, all right, so how's the Libertarian Party going to do things? And I think in the short term, it's not. But if you look over at the Democrats, you can see their primaries have been fixed since 2016, right? Libertarian, the party establishment fixed it for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders in the primaries in 2016.
Sure.
In 2020, they ran cover for Joe Biden and got him the nomination. And of course, there were a series of events called COVID that made it so he didn't actually have to do any real debating, or not any substantial debating anyway. So they didn't have to test his how much he had aged mentally.
Yeah. Right.
And then in 2024, they basically didn't have a primary at all, right? They moved some of the primaries so that it would favor Joe Biden. They didn't hold any debates. They kept Biden in the White House. There were a whole series of things. And then when it became obvious they couldn't run him, they just jettisoned Biden and threw in Harris without any votes and without any. So the Democratic Party primary process, at least at the presidential level, and really below that is gone. There's no hope for Thomas Jefferson's party. The Democratic Party used to be the party of small government. It used to be the party of Jefferson and Madison and Grover Cleveland and Al Smith and all of these parties, all of these party officials who generally sought smaller government.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now the Republican Party is, I suspect, trying to learn its lesson from Trump. Now, they didn't want him, and he ran an insurgency from inside the Republican Party. He ran basically a third-party campaign within the Republican primary process, right? He wasn't even a Republican, really. He was a Democrat, and he joined the Republican Party. And because he has extraordinary talents as a politician, he ran away with it in three elections, at least for the Republican Party nomination. Yeah. Well, the party establishment didn't want him really in any of these three elections, but there was nothing they could do to stop it.
Sure.
I suspect they're going to button up the Republican Party like they buttoned up the Democratic Party. And that leaves us with an opening, because you'll have two really bad establishment parties. And it won't matter if they create a third bad establishment party. People are going to ask for a real alternative.
Yeah.
When the crisis comes, and a crisis is coming. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be months away. It's not going to hit precisely on 2028.
Sure.
It may not hit until after that. It may not hit till 2023 or whatever, 2032. But we have a sovereign debt crisis coming. When
100%.
we are at $2 trillion a year annual deficit, and they want to add another $500 billion to it. It's totally unsustainable. That's adding $17,000 to the national debt every year for every household in America. I mean, just imagine what it would be for your family if you added $17,000 a year on top of several $100,000 that you already owe, and you had to pay interest on it. It is not sustainable.
Well, and I think in the nature of this conversation too, I'm going to bring up real quick Mark's comment, because he actually brings up the whole third party issue, right? Where if you guys have the chance, please explain the why and how for a viable third party, and why and how this will only benefit the Dems. Thanks. I would kind of just, I guess it might not even be a very good argument, but in my personal opinion, I think when we look back at like kind of the inception of our country, there was about 6 times as many like small little fragmented parties I mean, literally over just that, like, oh, like we are the party of cattle because we we care about cattle, or like we're the party of shipping merchants or what. And I think what that actually created is it wasn't so much the motivation for the party itself, is what parties were used and created for, at least to my understanding, is like it just brought people together for common causes. So the people that would eventually come through the ranks and to run, they would evaluate a lot of different things, and they would be like, okay, like I am good on these issues, I'm good on these issues, I'm not so great on these issues. And every once in a while you might get a candidate that actually is produced by these parties that might actually come up through the ranks and be a successful contender. And I think we do need to like, if we want to actually take control back of like our ability to vote, quote unquote, we do need to fragment things. We need to basically obliterate the system that exists, and we have to kind of spread this out. So it's not a matter of just a third party. I think we need to have like 20 more parties, simply for the sake of the fact that it kind of spreads out the issues, and it's going to kind of decentralize, at least as it were, like it was kind of back then. Now, of course, that's asking a lot. That is a very, very tall order. But I do think that, it kind of becomes this thing to where, like, I do agree with you though, Tom, in terms of like, I do think that eventually the conservatives or the Republicans, they will eventually clamp down exactly the way the Democrats did. And when that happens, good luck trying to get anybody that you like to even remotely get close to a nomination or feel like you even have a choice in the matter at all. Like, that choice is slowly getting stripped away. And I would even argue, honestly, like, if you think that you act honestly, your vote is going to, in any way, going to affect the goings on in the party, or whatever the case is between the Democrats and the Republicans, I think it's just, I think it's kind of a lost cause. Like, there is an absolute need to have outside contenders, and there's an absolute need to be able to have somebody to come forth and check and challenge the power structure that exists. But like you said, honestly, like, I do believe that there's a lot of potential still in the Libertarians, but it's not going to be any short time from now. They have to play the long game, and it's going to take the long game to get there. And on it, I wouldn't even be opposed to seeing another couple parties in the next few years pop up. So that way, you're again decentralizing a lot of this power, and hopefully giving people a lot more lateral movement and leeway in their decisions. And I guess kind of to wrap up my point and toss it over to you, I do think traditionally libertarians have typically done a bit better as it relates to like grassroots, local community, and depending in the state, than they really have like at the federal level. And I might be a little wrong about that, but that's at least been my perception. So I'm going to toss it over to you for some of your comments to Mark's question, and let's hear what you have to say too. So,
okay. Well, let me answer Mark's second question first. Okay.
Sure.
Why and how this will only benefit the Democrats? I'll tell you how. Just ask any Republican, right? Mm-hmm. I have a lifelong friend who's a Republican. I said I voted third party, and she said, "Oh, well, you just voted for the Republicans." I said, "No, I voted for the Libertarians. I didn't vote for the Republicans." She goes, "No, but you helped the Democrat win." I'm like, "Excuse me. How did I live in Massachusetts, right? We're in Massachusetts, right? In my lifetime, the presidential vote only went to the Republican once in my lifetime, and that was Ronald Reagan back in 1984, and he really didn't need it. How did my vote possibly impact it to help the Democrats? It didn't. I mean, that's the dumb propaganda narrative. Like, it doesn't always benefit the Democrats. That's just that. Now, here's the thing. If you go back to 2024, some of the leading libertarians voted for Trump.
Sure.
All right, let me give you three examples. Dave Smith, Clint Russell, who is also a vice presidential candidate, and Michael Heiss, who was the former head of the Mises Caucus. Okay.
Yep.
My view is only Michael Heiss had an argument.
Sure.
Okay. Because Michael Heiss lives in Pennsylvania, which is a swing state. He could possibly have impacted the result if he really thought that Trump was going to make a difference. And, there was an argument that, there's all this censorship going on and Trump pledged to stop it. And he didn't really, but the pressure, it has been off, except for the new pressure against the sort of anti-Semitism threat for pressure. But if your argument is, hey, I don't want to swing it to the lesser of two evils,
sure,
then you have 10 states where you could possibly make your vote strategic. But Dave Smith is from New Jersey, a blue state.
Yes.
And Clint Russell is from Florida, a red state. They wasted their vote. They wasted their vote. Dave Smith wasted his vote and Clint Russell wasted his vote. And let me tell you, I love both those guys, but they, if you're going to make a strategic vote, use some freaking strategy. There was no strategy in it, right? It was just a wasted vote. I mean, I know they didn't like Chase Oliver. I mean, I don't have a personal beef with the guy. I don't like his politics, or I didn't like the way he ran his campaign. I think it was terrible.
Agreed. Yep.
But if your philosophy is, hey, I don't want to swing the election the wrong way, and I want the Libertarian Party to have leverage, and you be able to use that leverage to free Russ Albrecht. Well, Dave Smith and Clint Russell made it a one-off as far as leverage goes, and they had no impact whatsoever. I mean, Trump didn't care if you voted for him, if libertarians voted for him in New Jersey or Florida or any deep blue or deep red state. He wasn't, we weren't going to affect those anyway. All right. All we did was make the one reason Trump went to the Libertarian National Convention is we got 3.3% in 2016. And he's like, gee, that was about the margin of loss in 2020. That was the whole calculus. All right. But if all of the libertarians from all of the states that should be voting Libertarian suddenly say, I'm going to be strategic and I'm going to vote for Trump, even though my vote can have absolutely no impact on the actual result. They lose their strategy and they lose their leverage. So we will never be able to negotiate in the future or use our leverage in the future. I think that was a travesty. Now, again, Michael Heiss, he comes from Pennsylvania. If he wants to make that decision, that's fine. I don't know what I would do if I were in a swing state, but I know it's an easy vote. If you are in a highly partisan, deep blue, deep red state, to just vote for the best person on the ballot. If you don't vote for the best person on the ballot in a highly partisan state, then you're really wasting your vote. That's what I get called from my old friend who says, "Oh, you wasted your vote. You voted for the Democrat." No. I wasted my vote if I didn't vote for the best person on the ballot. I didn't vote. If I have a choice of good, not so good, evil, and even more evil, and I choose for the not so evil, then I've wasted my vote. Especially when I know it's not going to impact the result of the election. Sure. So, and I was particularly disappointed with Dave Smith because I wrote about this very issue for the Mises Caucus blog in the lead up to 2024. All he had to do was read. I don't know, whatever. Well, anyway, that's my rant there. But one more point about your comment about play the long game. It's not that long a game necessarily with the Libertarian Party. Keep in mind, Javier Milei went from his Libertad Avanza having no seats in the National Assembly, no seats in the National Legislature, to the presidential office in 4 years. All right. He went from no seats to 3 seats out of 500, whatever, to the presidency. 2-year, three 2-year steps. Nothing, 3 running the show. And the reason is there was an economic collapse, and that's what's coming. So to be prepared for that, I think it's still a long shot. It's still it makes us viable in the sense that we have life. It does not make it likely.
Yes.
The Libertarian Party has to absolutely get its act in gear and be serious and
For sure.
not be posting ridiculous things. And
can't be memeing all day long.
Well, we can meme, but yeah, it can't be driving people away as
right. Exactly.
Some of our state party social media is doing, and New Hampshire's doing it on the right, and and Louisiana's doing it on the left, and you have to have an appeal to not the middle, but to whatever the American people are wherever they're at right now.
For sure,
that's what it's got to be, and it's got to be an economic appeal too.
Yeah, and I think, and I had spoken to actually Mark from Centerline, who poses the question. I had brought up to him in the duration of one of our conversations. I'm like, honestly, I said, I do get the sense that there is also a movement to where people do. I think you're starting to see more people that are kind of caring about principled people once again, to where it's just like, okay, like, are you actually about what you say, or are you just full of crap and just going to lead us on? And unfortunately, that the downside to this is a lot of people actually thought Trump was going to be that much more different. Well, surprise, surprise, as we'll start getting into, especially as it pertains to like the anti-war and the smaller government, you kind of played yourself. But we'll get into that here shortly. But I think that there is a kind of a craving for more principled individuals and really being about what you say you're going to be about. And I don't think it's foolish, at least in my mind, to say like, oh, well, you can't be so principled or whatever. It's like, okay, well, but if we're not going to hold some of our principles, at least to a high degree at that point, then like, what is the point of trying? If we're not at least going to stand by some of the core fundamental things, especially like as it pertains to liberty, it's like, then what is the point of even talking about that or having that discussion when it's so much easier just to go with the other thing? And I do kind of get the sense, and I could be totally off on this, but I think people want that for good or bad. I think people want a stern set of ideals or principles that really people will adhere to, that they know is not just going to be bought, paid, or shilled out every second that they get while they're in power. And I tend to take a little bit more of a principled approach myself, to where like I feel like abiding by the things that you say that you stand for is important. And I don't think it should be something that's cast out. Now, can those change? Yes, things can always change as we start to have things that come into our perception, that affect our worldview, that occur, or whatever the case is. Like, yes, things can potentially change, but I also don't think that those changes should be whimsical or just at the drop of a hat. I think they should be very considered. And I know, again, that's asking a lot, but I also think that that's one thing where, when we look at the parties in the grand scheme of things, I think that's where a lot of everything falls apart, is you have these parties that hang their hat on whether it's civil rights or whether it's smaller government, and everybody's just like, oh, this is great. And then all of a sudden they send you the bill, and it's just like, no, actually, like, we just gave you more of the same. And nothing about what you elected us for even matters whatsoever. And I think that's where the Libertarian Party and other potential parties that can come about, I think, have a unique opportunity to be like, no, like, we are principled. These are our set of principles. These are our kind of our blueprint, and we will adhere to this and do the very best that we can to fulfill these as they pertain to liberty or maintaining liberty, etc. So I'll let you respond to that, and then there is one other comment, and then we can we'll move on to some other topics of conversation that I think you and I are both burning to talk about. So
yeah, no, I think you're right. And if we don't follow principle, we get what we have.
Yeah.
We've elevated people we know have no principles.
100%.
Like Bill Clinton, who got blowjobs in the White House. Donald Trump, who's on his third wife and is getting blown by a porn star. And this is where we are, right? At some point you have to say, we need someone who's principled. Now it's tough because
100%. Yeah.
Barack Obama came in as principled and he turned out not to be. Mike Johnson, who's the current Speaker of the House.
Yep.
He even fooled Glenn Greenwald. He went on Glenn Greenwald and said, gee, I'm against this warrantless surveillance stuff. And I know the Constitution. And he explained all and then as soon as he became Speaker, within days, he reversed his position like that because he just didn't have the principles, but he put on the show. So finding the person who is actually principled is tough, but we know we've seen it, and we can see it when they're under fire, like Thomas Massey, like Ron Paul, like Rand Paul to a certain extent.
For sure. Yep.
Justin Amash. There are people who are principled. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think in saying that too, Tom, like when I say principled, it doesn't mean that people aren't, I think you can have very principled people, and it doesn't mean you have to agree with them all the time. It's just like, be consistent with the values that you espouse. Like that is like such a big thing. And there's certain things that, like, when I see Thomas Massey bring it up, I'm like, I know where you're going with it, but I don't know if that's necessarily the best approach. And so I'll have like a schism or like a difference. But what's different with Massey or Paul is this, they both at least are relatively consistent with their approach. They're relatively consistent with their beliefs, and they've maintained a fairly consistent course through the duration of their time in office. And I think, again, like it's the crux of what we're both saying, is like, to me, that's important. And they do exist. It's just, and that even furthers this notion towards, like, we have to look outside the Democrats and Republicans if we actually want to find these people, because they're not only just going to be in those camps, they're going to be other places too. So I totally agree. There's I think Chuck had a couple comments that I want to highlight here quick, and I'll allow you to kind of elaborate on that if you will. And then we can move on to the big, beautiful dumpster fire and the general economic impacts, because I do want to get more into that 2 trillion a year and the greater impacts that's going to have. But also I want to get into the Israel and Iran conflagration also, because I know that was something that you and I had talked about. So let's take a look here. So this is the first. Chuck kind of had a few, so I'll kind of bring them up little by little. You can obviously see what he said. What is kind of your opinion or your disposition on this first comment here, and then I can bring up the next couple also. I'm not sure if you had.
I'm not familiar with the local Michigan Libertarian Party.
Okay.
I know there was some rankling that Amash should come over. He ran for president of the Libertarian, or ran for president under the Libertarian banner, and then all of a sudden he was a Republican again. And as before I joined the Libertarian Party, I was a donor to Justin Amash as a Republican. And after he became a Libertarian member of Congress, I donated a few more bucks to him. I don't know. I'm not I don't have any money. I'm a working guy. But I supported him, and I didn't have any money to give him during his Senate campaign. I know he lost the primary to Mike Rogers, which Trump endorsed Mike Rogers. Trump is not much Trump. Mike Rogers is as deep state as it gets.
Sure.
And Trump came in and endorsed him, and therefore he won. So I don't know if you can blame the Libertarian Party for him winning. I think what the comment is about is, the the Libertarian Party brought Trump into their national convention.
Sure.
And Trump tried to win the Libertarian Party over, but there wasn't an endorsement of Trump. And I've got some criticism of Angela McArdle as chair. I think that the report came out this week that's said she deceived the Libertarian National Committee about money that was going to her fiance, and it was done with subterfuge. But as far as the convention goes, I think she ran a masterful convention. And if you can get the president to come or the nominee of any other party to come to the Libertarian National Convention and make promises, I'm for that.
Sure.
I'm seeing the comment here. Chuck and Money says general, not primary. Did he run as a Libertarian? I thought he ran in I see. I'm not even familiar with the thing. I thought Amash ran in the Republican primary against Mike Rogers. But I could, as a Republican, I could be wrong, but I thought that's what it was. I'm just not familiar enough with it.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't really have a dog, so to speak, in that particular fight, because I really just don't know enough about Michigan to really say one way or the other. I'm only so vaguely familiar with other states, really, in their own local situations. So I appreciate you kind of putting forth a little some few points on that, because I'm just kind of really out of my wheelhouse there. And then I think so Chuck also made a point too, and I hope he doesn't mind if I put this up. One more thing here. There was a response, and I just wanted you to see that before I bring up a couple others. But
so the LP, okay. So the LP tanked Mike Rogers in the general. So Trump got him over the line in the Republican primary, and then and so I don't care. In that case, I don't care. As a Libertarian, I don't care.
Yeah.
Mike Rogers may have voted with whatever the Republicans wanted economically, with their budget, but he was not going to be turning things around at all.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. So Chuck brought up a couple points after that. He brings up something regarding tariffs, and I hope Chuck doesn't mind me showing this. But he brings up tariffs, and he kind of lightly explains something here regarding manufacturing. And so this is the first comment. And then there's one more comment here, when you're ready, that I'll bring up.
No, I've read it.
Okay. And then there's, I believe this is the second part of the comment. If you wanted to elaborate a little bit on this.
Well, I don't know what his particular, he runs a manufacturing company, and he's afraid of everything going off the rails. And for a while I was too. Trump has pulled the gas back on the tariffs, which is good.
Yes.
But
this may be a good segue, by the way, into the big, beautiful bill. So
yeah, but it may still create enough chaos to have a very negative impact on the economy.
Okay.
But I don't know. A lot of people knew the tariffs were coming, and they imported as much as they could before the tariffs took effect, so that they would have product to sell on the shelves. And that's why we haven't had shortages.
Sure.
And we would have otherwise on a lot of products, because a lot of things come in and they are 100% imported. And some things we absolutely have to import. Coffee.
Yeah.
mangoes, there's just any kind of tropical food. You can grow it in Hawaii. Maybe there's a few areas in Southern California and Southern Florida you can grow it, but there's just not enough, so there were going to be shortages. There's certain minerals that you can't get in the United States.
Right.
I think that I could be wrong, but I think titanium was one of them. But I mean, like, there are certain minerals you can't get in the United States. So, and they have to be imported. And that really would have messed things up. So what a lot of people did, knowing Trump was going to increase the tariffs, is what they did was they imported a lot before the tariffs took place. And then they had a brief window, and then Trump let down. So it maybe it didn't have the effect that they feared, and that's good.
Right.
But it still may tank the thing,
For sure. Yeah. And, and I hate to say it, but it's one of those things where I'm kind of of the opinion also that I feel like if people, if people hadn't taken kind of that proactive approach a little bit, it would have become one of those things to where, like, that would have been the time when nothing relented. He didn't come back potentially off of the terror. So it's like, it's almost like one of those things to where, like, it's almost damned if you do and damned if you don't, because either way, like, you were taking a potential risk, right? Like, you're trying to brace for impact. The impact never came. But then if they never would have done that, I mean, my gosh, you would have seen so many things just kind of tank or crap the bed, just on the fact that there's just not enough there to be able to produce anything of any meaningful volume. So it does create a very trepidatious situation. Like you said, thankfully, there was at least enough rationale to where he's like, maybe this isn't the most optimal situation that we could be in.
Well, I mean, that was the thing.
Yeah.
Scott Bessent basically convinced him, hey, look, these tariffs that we enacted, what it created was empty ports, and that's going to be a problem going forward. So we've got to do something different. And he did, at least temporarily. Now, that doesn't mean he's not going to have some cockamamie scheme to raise tariffs again.
Sure.
But also at this point, one of the other good things is the courts are ruling against him being able to just unilaterally raise tariffs, because that's not a constitutional power of the president. Even
Sure.
The argument has been in the past, well, Congress delegated this power to the president. Well, if you go back in court history, the courts have ruled that Congress can't delegate away its powers to raise taxes or anything else. So the courts are going to come down on this and declare it invalid anyway going forward. So I think the window on Trump's tariff chaos is closing. It's not closed, but it's closing.
It's getting smaller little by little. And Mark and I had a pretty good discussion, and he just threw down a comment, which we had talked about a number of times. And I, because we had a discussion pertaining to Ron Paul and some of the Hayek and Rothbard and their overall points on the economy. And it was the notion, which I 100% agree with, like, things got to fail, dude, and let the market kind of settle itself out. But that's it. In saying that, like, we have to, I think there is a degree too, to where you're now talking about making a shift from a train of thought from, like, the Keynesian approach versus a free market approach. Because in a free market approach, like, absolutely, like, the market will decide. It will, like, you will either fail or you will succeed. Whereas, like, when you have the Keynesian approach, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you end up seeing these bailouts, these subsidies, like, we're going to support you so you never fail, which just bloats and creates the more austere conditions. And it has this, there's kind of this notion to the point where it's like, well, we can save it. And a lot of that, from my understanding, that line of thought actually came, oh gosh, I think it was the first time they tried to take that approach was shortly after 1913, where they got, I think it was like 1917. They almost got like full in on that. And then they're like, no, like, and they just kind of let things fail. And then I think it was like after, what was it, after like the 20s or the 30s, where that's when they finally pulled the trigger on like fully supporting something that was about to fail. And then it kind of just escalated from there. So I don't know if I got all of that correct, but that's kind of what I vaguely remember. If you want to flesh that out quick, Tom.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There was a panic in 1907, which was before 1913, before the creation of the Fed. And basically what happened was...
And maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what it was. Okay.
And JP Morgan went in, and as everything was tanking, he went in and bought everything at bargain basement rates. And that's basically what happens, right? When you have overvaluated assets, the guys who still have money left come in and they buy the bargains, and that saves the economy. And Morgan wanted more control over the economy, so we got the Fed.
Sure.
And what happened was the Fed didn't really intervene that much in an active way in the economy until the 1930s. If you look at after the end of World War II, we had this huge inflation because of the war and all the production and all the borrowing. And what happened was the Fed just let everything collapse, and we had what was called the Depression of 1920. But it was a one-year depression, and prices fell by almost half, and bargain hunters went in and bought all the assets at prices, and any asset that wasn't worth anything, it just failed. But everything that was still worth money was rescued and became productive again. And by the Great Depression, the Fed was more into they were into the Keynesian style, even though Keynes hadn't really come up with his style. But his view was basically this: look, the economy works really well by itself. The private economy works really well by itself most of the time. The problem is we have all these panics. We have a bubble, then we have a panic. And the bubble, people get too overly enthusiastic. And, wouldn't it be great if we had a government central bank to come in and kind of tamp the overenthusiasm? And then when the panic comes, we could kind of lift up the panic. And then, we'd have this nice, even economy, and the growth would be steady, because when the panics happen, I mean, they are what we would today call recessions. They are negative economic growth. There's damage recorded on the economy. Now, the damage is actually done during the bubble, but people see the harm when the crash comes. So the argument for Keynesianism, well, wouldn't it be nice if we had this? But the reality is, government just gets involved and starts manipulating things. And typically what it does is it doesn't just add a depressant and a sleeping pill when people get too excited. It just puts cocaine and stimulants into the economy all the time. And then there's a crash anyway. And, we still have recessions, and we still have panics like we did in 2008. And our economic growth overall is much slower, because we're constantly, just like a person who's constantly on stimulants, he's not as productive. Why? Because he's like this, and he can't function normally. Well, that's the way our economy is right now. If we simply went back to normality and let the market decide, then the level of productivity, or the rate of productivity increase, would be back to where it was certainly prior to 2000. I mean, most people don't know this, but we've only had 1 year where GDP increase has been higher than 3% since the year 2000. But if you go back before 2000, say that
your analogy.
I think he just likes the cocaine and stimulants, but whatever. Anyway,
call out, Mark. Call out.
So, but I mean, here's the thing: if you go back to the 25 years before our current century, 2 out of 5 years were 3% or greater growth. And some of them were 4 and 5%. So the economic growth has been much lower under the era of stimulating low interest rates and more money creation than it was when we weren't stimulating as much.
Sure. Yeah, oh gosh, I kind of want to take this and delve this into the big beautiful dumpster fire, because speaking of
this is my depressant, by the way. I'm just having a little whiskey. I just started, I don't want to get too excited.
Oh,
this is as far as towards Keynesianism as I go,
Well, I hate to say it. There's one other depressant, and I think that's the big beautiful dumpster fire, where for whatever reason, this whole notion of like, well, but if we just spend more, Tom, we're going to make it through this. It might be an exponential growth to where I think it was estimated by the end of it, like to be somewhere close to like 56 trillion by the time everything is said and done. But it's like, I don't think that's how that works. Much like the same way of how like you can't comply your way out of tyranny. You can't buy or spend your way out of such an egregious spending or debt problem, right? I mean, or am I a little bit wrong on that?
Yeah, well, Javier Milei gave Elon Musk one of those chainsaws, right? And he said, "Oh, take the meat axe to the budget and spending." Trump didn't even let him get an emery board and exfoliate. I mean, that's what we've come down to. It is an increase, and yes, it's less of an increase in spending than the Democrats want, but it's an increase in spending over what we did last year. But the baseline is always, well, we were going to increase by 7%. We're only going to increase by 4%. So it's a 3% cut. No, it's not a 3% cut. That's not how math works, but that's how math in Washington works, because, hey, the baseline is 7%. So, we if we increase by 4%, then we're golden. Yeah. And it's not how it works. And that's how the big, beautiful bill is working. And plus it's got all of those absolutely horrid Washington as bells on it, as Thomas Massey would call it. It's they've got, we're going to get rid of taxes on tips and taxes on overtime. And that's good. That's good. But it's for the rest of Trump's presidency. And then they put the baseline. Then the tax goes back on those things as soon as he's no longer president. And the reason for it is more than clear. It's to be able to blame the Democrats for a tax increase when they get in office, because probably they'll be in office. And if not, the Republicans will say, see, we gave you another tax cut, even though you're paying the same amount of taxes. And all of the, not all, but most of the actual cuts that they're talking about, and of course they're cuts on increases, not cuts, are more than 4 years out. In other words, they're going to give the Democrats two tries at congressional elections in order to be able to repeal them. They're not real. No, as a general rule, whatever Congress spends during the time it's in session, that's government spending. Whatever Congress spends after that, that's wishing. Whatever they cut after that, that's wishing. It's not a plan. It's not like, because the next Congress can just repeal it or undo it. So the deficit matters only for the next 2 years, really, and for the 4 years on the outside. If you're looking at, because a lot of the senators go out, 4 years or more. The president's 4 years. But anything beyond 2028 is irrelevant from the standpoint of what Congress does, because they're not responsible for what happens after 2038. They're only 2028. They're only responsible for what happens from 2024 to 2026. And then if they're reelected, to 2028.
Sure.
That's what they're voting on, really. And what they're voting on is to increase the deficit from 1.9 trillion to about 2.4 trillion, and maybe
Sure.
more if interest rates stay high-ish, because the cost of national debt is going up continuously. A lot of the debt is coming due that was sold out for very low interest rates. If you remember, just back in 2022, you could buy or the government could sell 10-year treasury bonds for 2%. Well, they're not doing that now. It's 4% and 4.5%.
Sure.
It could go, and for a period of time, it was up to 5%. And all of those debt instruments that they floated out there and sold, they're coming back in, and we have to pay them off. And then we circulate new debt instruments at the higher interest rate. And so the average interest rate that the federal government has paid it's gone up from 2% to 3%, and it's going to be closer to 4% or more as we go forward, unless they take interest rates back down to just about zero.
Sure.
So, I mean, the Federal Reserve, to a certain extent, they are between a rock and a hard place right now, because if Trump's pressuring them to lower interest rates, not that it stimulates the economy, it doesn't, but everybody thinks it does. So, we're going to hurt the economy if we keep interest rates high, but if they keep interest rates high, then the deficits swell. But if they do lower the interest rates, well, they're going to have to, there's a risk of more inflation. There's a risk of more, certainly, I don't think there'll be a risk of price inflation in the sense that of consumer prices. I mean, if you look at the history of the impact interest rates has had on the consumer price index, it's not much. But if you look at the impact of interest rates on hard assets that are generally purchased with credit, it really increases the prices of those, like houses and cars and expensive things, boats, construction projects, because everybody's like, oh, I can get it for this payment. Like the market price is the monthly payment. It's not the sticker price. Nobody pays the sticker, not nobody, but most people don't pay the sticker price on a house. They pay, I can make $2,500 a month or whatever the mortgage payment is, and not, and they don't worry about, is it 400,000 a year or 600,000? Well, I don't care. Can I make the monthly payment? That's the only consideration. And it's the same with buying automobiles. It's the same with large construction projects. Often, it's only the more clever people that have to look at the sticker prices. So
it's when I was reading, when I had read both your article and then the one you had recommended me, which I'm at the end of this through editing and the magic of after action, I will be putting both of those articles underneath in the description as well. But both of them talked about the big beautiful bill, the ramifications, and so many different points there. And I can't. It's so much to kind of get one's head around, to where you do have this mentality of just like, well, we have to do something. It's like you kind of mentioned, that you have the 7%, but like, we're only going to do 4%. It's not that bad. Or, like, we're going to kick the can down. Like Massey had even said a number of times, like, all you do is kick the can down the road. You wash your hands of this responsibility when there is an opportunity to actually do something that potentially could have benefited. And he's like, and really it wouldn't take much, but you could do a lot more than what you're doing. And I think that to many degrees, it is like a conscious choice to continue just like increasing, especially when you have so many special interests and you have so many sideline parties that want you to do this or want you to do that. And like, yeah, like you said, with the whole tips and the overtime, and great, you're taking it away or you're reducing the impact of it. You're not wrong. It is only for a certain amount of time, and somebody can come in and just completely nullify that at will, after everything's all said and done, in 4 years or what have you. And I think I do think there has to be a mechanism of failure at some point. I don't think that we can continue along this trajectory. I'm not convinced we're ever going to pay this debt off. As a matter of fact, I think this debt is going to be a great undoing to this country, unfortunately. And at some point, we are going to succumb in some way to the weight of it all. And I don't think that, the bill certainly does not do it any justice. And I do think that in many, many ways, perhaps even in some that I don't see, it just accelerates it. I don't think it just slowly goes up in the speed limit. I think it just accelerates it a little bit more, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would encourage the readers to read Joseph Solis-Mullens' article on it. He gets more into the nuts and bolts of the article than I do. I just talk about the sort of overall thing.
Sure.
And one of the criticisms that someone could have for my article is, hey, this bill actually gives working stiffs like me, maybe your wait staff or whatever, and your good part of your income is tips. And it's like, this is going to help me. And I suppose it will help some people, for a few years. But here's the thing, like overall, it's not going to even be a progressive. It's not going to make the tax rate more progressive by giving that thing, because, I've been given to saying for many years that the most regressive tax is inflation, because it taxes almost exclusively working people's incomes.
Sure.
About 40% of, it only taxes cash-based assets, and the biggest cash-based asset our dollar-denominated asset is labor. It's about 40% of GDP.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the other assets, like real estate and stocks, they're not dollar-based. I mean, they may be evaluated in dollars, but they're not dollar-based.
Sure.
So they're not taxed at all. But there is one tax. So the inflation does fall primarily, almost exclusively, on working people. But there's one tax that's more regressive even than inflation, because it falls exclusively on people who are, by definition, poorer than even the poorest working man. Because the poorest working man at least owns his own labor.
Sure.
He may not have anything else. He may have a rented apartment. He may have no assets. But he owns his own labor. But debt falls exclusively on people who are yet unborn, don't even own their own labor.
Yep.
They don't have any assets. That's who it taxes. And in that sense, it's the most regressive tax. So yeah, you're taking it from working people in the form of tips, but you're putting it right back on working people, the poorest of the poor. So the tax rate is the spending rate, and the worst tax is debt. After that, inflation. They're close, but debt, I would say, is worse than inflation.
Yeah. It's and I'll kind of attempt to put a bow tie on this. And I remember it wasn't Massey. I think it was, oh gosh, who was it? Ron Johnson? Or who was it? It was, I don't remember exactly who it was, but somebody had said, one of the worst crimes when it comes to like the big, beautiful bill, and I say crime in a semi-loose manner, but one of the worst things is not just with the bill, but with so many of the decisions that are made in increasing spending more, we can't do it now, we have to do it later, and then it kicks the can down the road, as Massey says, is really like when you look at it, we're condemning our future and our children to like debt slavery, essentially. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Like, we're giving them an unwinnable situation to this point, to where it's like, you're born into this, you don't have a choice. We did nothing to even attempt to stymie it or prevent it. And this is the world that you now know, and you didn't, you had no choice in it, really. And I think when you look at the outrageous spending, you look at these bills that exclaim to do like so many wonderful things, big beautiful bill, these bombastic names that I think you can only really get from the Trump era, if we're being honest. I mean, he's got away with words, and his administration's got away with words. And I do find it somewhat amusing, but it's like, yeah, like, but underneath all of that, like, the future posterity, they get the brunt of it, man, and it's like, and there's really no consideration, I feel, amongst virtually most of these individuals, where it's like, hey, wait a minute, like, what are we condemning the future to? Or do we want to, kind of step back and evaluate this, and do we want to straddle them with way more than what we're even having to deal with now? And I just don't think many of these people care. I don't think that there's enough concern, honestly, to where that's even a thought. They're more concerned about, like, am I going to get elected next year, or in the next 2 years? Am I going to win favor with my party? Am I going to, et cetera, et cetera. The examples, I'm sure, can go on, but I mean, really, like, we're losing right now, but I think the future is are the ones who end up losing even worse than us, because they have no fighting chance, it seems. So
no, we're run by children. I mean, children who can't do math, because if you look at, the national debt is what, 37 trillion.
Are you saying public school systems are failing us?
Yeah, for some time. But $37 trillion, that's roughly $200,000 for every household in America. Yeah. Okay. And they're adding, they were about to add $15,000 every year. And then the Trump basically said, no, let's make it 17,000.
Why not?
And it's just, and every year. And at some point you realize, gee, if I had $200,000 debt and I was in my house and I was adding $15,000 to $20,000 a year more on, and the interest rate was going up on my credit card, which is exactly what's happening to America. At some point, I'm not going to be able to pay the bill, and that's going to happen with America. Yeah. So and you're right, exactly what you said. They only give a thought to the next election and their position within the party and the committee assignments. There's no adult level thinking there. There's no sacrifice for the country. It's all about, well, how am I, if I'm in the right position, I can make a difference. But in the meantime, I'm helping the system that's taking everything down, and they don't do anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that kind of what you had just mentioned, sacrifice for the country, I think that brings us into a really nice segue of, speaking of sacrifice for the country, the same platform that brings you the illustrious, the beautiful, the Lux Big Beautiful Bill now presents to you the potential for your own brand new war in the Middle East, to where we might not necessarily have to be directly involved in it, but damn it, we're going to support we're going to support Israel and their conflagration and their conflict against Iran. And boy, it's going to be the most American thing we can do. All brought to you by the anti-war administration that won so much favor with everybody, of saying, we don't want anything to do with war. And then we're still continuing to fund Ukraine. We're still continuing to fund Israel and their exploits. And now, more contemporarily, within the last several hours, or several hours, the last 48 hours roughly, the attack that occurred on Iran. And it's like, I'm not even surprised, Tom. I'm really not even surprised. And one of the things that I heard somebody talk about today, I don't remember if it was I think it was on Judge Napolitano's his show, but they're just like, I hope everybody, if this really continues to escalate further and further, I hope everybody's ready for $10 a gallon gas, because and that's notwithstanding many other things. And so, but it's like, do we just have people that are just so obsessed with war? Like, do we just have people that just can't get enough of war? I mean, it's bad enough knowing that Lindsey Graham just likes to go and trape and whore himself out to whoever he wants to go see to make these backroom deals or these conversations. But I think we have a war issue. And unfortunately, I think there's also an issue of being involved with parties that, for whatever reason, we just get way too friendly with, and then we end up going and invariably at some point fighting, or in the very least overwhelmingly funding their wars, contrary to actually making America great again. So I'll kind of leave the opening diatribe to you to respond or add or subtract anything that you would like, but it just it's quite a situation.
Yeah. As a general, you're talking, we're zooming in from 30,000 feet here, because you're talking about America's general tendency toward war. And we definitely have that. And there are a number of influences there. There are the financial interests of the military industrial complex. There is the foreign interest of certain foreign powers, and certainly Israel is one of them, but they're not the only one. The British MI6 is also influential in promoting war, and has been since the 1930s with the United States. I mean, they even in the 1950s, they were the ones that provoked the United States into staging a coup in 1953 in Iran in order to protect British petroleum and their financial interests in Iran. So it's not just Israel, and it's not, and the CIA, of course, has, there's the bureaucracy that defends it. I mean, just as the Department of Agriculture has built a little empire of lobbies of every kind of farmer.
Absolutely.
I mean, they literally have, I bet you don't know this, they have a national popcorn board. That's funded by your taxes. Okay.
Holy balls.
And if you go to popcorn.org, they have the slogan, "Who knew healthy could taste this good?" I mean, like, if there's any
I've heard that slogan before. That's insane.
If there's any grain that is more devoid of vitamins and essential minerals than corn, I don't know what it is. Like, at least wheat has something, wheat, and some of these, corn has nothing. I'm like, the Native Americans I'm not kidding, in order to get through the winter, they used to take their corn and grind it in with charcoal in order to get the essential minerals they need so that they could survive through the winter, because corn was so devoid of vitamins. Yeah. And yet here it is, these empty sugar calories. Yeah. They're basically saying, "Oh, who knew? No, I love popcorn," but your tax dollars is going to say eating popcorn is healthy. All right. Yeah. Or eating honey. There's a national honey board too. All right. That's pure sugar. And I could go down the list. Yeah. And it's the same thing with the military industrial complex, right? They all have their own individual lobbies. Absolutely. We need the F-35, fighter. Yeah. We need it, and it may have lost a dogfight in production against the Red Baron and his Fokker triplane, but we need the F-35. By the way, there were two of them shot down in Israel reportedly. So,
oh boy.
Yeah. So
he's chalking up the wins.
Yeah. Against, I mean, Iran is a major power, but they're not, they're a power in the same sense that, militarily speaking, in the same sense that Russia or China or India are major powers. They don't have a nuclear weapon, but they have some very advanced military technology. It's not as advanced as the United States.
Sure.
But that our most advanced jet was shot down is, it speaks to, the whole idea of manned fighter planes and manned bombing planes are probably going out the window. Drones are going to be are really the future. But there are lobbies for the jet fighter, for the Navy, for this and that, the drone tech and all, and those are promoted every bit as much, and they have every bit as much of a lobby and a territorial basis. And that's why even traditionally, and you go back to 100 years, the Army and the Navy hated each other.
Yeah.
And they always fought over turf. And that's, that was even before a military industrial complex. You go to World War II, before the military industrial complex, the Army and the Navy would always fight with each other.
Yeah.
It was, what was it? MacArthur used to say of Eisenhower, well, they were both Army, but he used to say he's the best clerk I ever had. And they was trying to put him down. But I mean, it was worse when you go Navy to Army, and
sure.
that's that. So there's a lot of that, but that's from 30,000 feet. We can get to the specific conflict here, which is being promoted purely by propaganda.
Brought to you by Raytheon and 100 other drug companies that have nothing to do necessarily with war, but will help you increase your libido, decrease your fat, and there may be the risk of depression or anger, but go out and get this and be convinced you have a problem, and also support your local Raytheon dealership or something. I mean, I wish I was kind of wrong with that really crappy promotion, but that's kind of what it is, It's just like, like you may actually die from this, but we think you actually need it. We are going to convince you that you have a problem. And while you're convinced that you have a problem, you're drugged up on 15 different medications on a daily basis, we also want you to support our wonderful people over at Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Boeing, because boy, are they doing it for your best interest, and certainly not for the interests of other people. And you're 100% right, though, when it comes to, MI6 and so many other actors. I mean, honestly, there's quite a few of them. And I think one of the big glaring things about the current conflagration between Israel and Iran is I had heard several different pieces and points regarding the absolute just loss or apparent loss of trust and just hypocrisy of foreign policy when it comes to that, because this literally occurred right before they were supposed to go into negotiations, which really leads a lot of people to believe okay, so what this is going to show is you should never, now there's a precedent set to where if you go into a negotiation, there's a high probability, or at least a chance, that the person that's supposed to be at least one party of that is going to potentially attack the other party. And there's also the potential that the United States is going to be funding one of said parties. And they may have known about it for quite a while, which not to deviate a little bit, but I think you might be able to kind of extrapolate on this. But if that happened, if we knew about this attack that, when I say we, I mean the government that is, knew and helped coordinate and plan all of this between Israel and Iran. And then there was the question of well, did the US government know about, the drone attack by Ukraine on Russia and the civilian casualties and the strategic bombers and all that? I'm just left with this idea that the window of being able to excuse yourself out of being oh, we didn't know anything about this, or the plausible deniability, nobody's going to believe that anymore. And so,
oh, come on, there's the NSA is so busy spying on Americans that they don't know anything about what's going on in Ukraine that we're funding, or Israel that we're funding. Come on, why would they know about that?
No, it's horrible.
Just because it's 100% American weapons being used in these, including F-35s and it's a coincidence. And it's also a coincidence that earlier in the week before the strikes, America told all their embassies to get all their essential personnel out of there, non-essential personnel out of there, and harden all the bases in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know. It was coincidence that happened, I'm sure.
No, of course not.
But it's interesting looking at the propaganda because, Bibi Netanyahu has basically said the same thing since the mid-1990s, right?
Yeah.
Iran is within 2 years of getting a nuclear bomb. They're moving very quickly toward it. And, he's been saying that since the mid-1990s.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the other hand, the CIA has been saying right along privately, no, they're not. They don't have a nuclear program. And the Mossad has been saying privately, they don't have a nuclear program. But Bibi continues to say that. And then they preemptive strike against Iran against their nuclear facilities, which we know they have a nuclear energy facility. So they can truthfully say we struck their nuclear facilities, but they don't have a program for a bomb. But Bibi's been saying they have one for 30 years. So why stop now? But it just seems like we are in a loop, doesn't it? Like it's 2002 all over again. Saddam Hussein has a nuclear weapons program. If we don't act now, there'll be a mushroom cloud and blah, 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 blah. It's the same thing. They changed the Q for an N. It's not Iraq, it's Iran. And that's the only change. Like the rhetoric, which was poll tested, like they revealed after the Iraq war, it was poll tested. What would get Americans to buy this? Yeah. If it is a nuclear threat. So that's what they're going with again, because we fell for it 23 years ago. Well, we're going to fall for it again.
And I remember listening again. I listen to probably more podcasts than I should. I drive I drive truck, and so I have a lot of time on my hands in between trips. So I sit there and I just rabbit hole because I like to learn, but I also like to see different perspectives. And the most consistent theme that I've heard, especially as it pertains to the current conflagration between Israel and Iran, whether it's Israel and Gaza or anything in the Middle East, is the 7 countries in 5 years memo. And it's like, if you look at where that lies, Iran is the last one. And we have been sucked into every single one of those endeavors every single time. And it's amazing how, it's almost like they couldn't scratch the itch anymore. There was no stopping it. They had to go in against Iran. It's like, I hate to say it, but it was literally like a crackhead waiting to get that fix, and he couldn't wait anymore. So he just went out and quick thefted something to get his hit. And it's like, it doesn't surprise me though. Like, this is a pattern. It's a consistent pattern, as it was a consistent pattern for Bibi of being like, only 2 years, Tom, like, and they're going to have it. And he said that, like you said, so consecutively. And it's like, I don't know. It's just so detrimental, and it's tiresome. It's tiring seeing that that our elected officials, which we can get into that conversation if you want, but like, so many of them are just so like bought and paid for into this the conflagration in the Middle East camp, and we have to do this. It's for national security. We have to defend our allies in this. If I'm not mistaken, there was a number of our founders that were like, what we shouldn't do? We shouldn't have overwhelmingly hated enemies, and we also shouldn't have people we like too much, because that causes problems. In the very least, we should attempt to trade with these people, or at least have open lines of diplomatic communication to where we can at least deal with these people in the most constructive way before we start bombing the shit out of each other. And somehow I think we've lost that.
Oh, absolutely.
Am I wrong, Tom?
Absolutely. No, you're right. I can't argue with the word that you said. It's amazing that they just continue with the propaganda nonstop, and it doesn't have to do like, it was interesting. Scott Horton was on a debate with I was just on a news channel recently. It's of the Scott Horton of the Libertarian Institute,
Mm.
and he had said, there's Iran doesn't have a nuclear program, and the host said, well, you think you know more than the Mossad? The Mossad says they have a nuclear program, and Scott didn't have time to respond, but historically the Mossad has said that they don't.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ever reversed it. I know Bibi says that, but that's different because he was saying they had a nuclear program at a time the Mossad was saying they did not. In fact, I put in the chat here a link to a Jerusalem Post story back. It's 2015, so it's 10 years old. But the Mossad had said, no, Iran doesn't have a nuclear program. And of course, the CIA has concluded the same. The International Energy, the UN inspectors have said that Iran was complying with their inspections as long as they were in the thing. But the official propaganda is, well, Iran is they're bad and they have a nuclear weapons program. What's the evidence? Well, the Mossad says so. Well, but the Mossad didn't say so. Well, the Bibi said so. The story just changes and changes. They never need any evidence, and it's just like we're in this loop of we're back to Iraq again with where we have to believe the spies who basically are privately telling the leaders the opposite of what they're telling the American people and the world, people of the world in public.
It's just crazy. Like, I feel like so many of the excuses become just so recycled, and it's almost like their default setting, if you will. It's just like, but we said so, like, or okay, maybe we didn't say so, but this other guy said so, and it seems to be the same set of people over and over again. And actually, Mark brought up the IAEA, which interestingly enough happened to change their disposition on Iran conveniently recently, to where where they had brought up and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but to where it was acceptable, but now there's the way that they're conducting their nuclear operations to their nuclear facilities are now unacceptable. And
well, I think that's outrageous that Iran would would not comply with a treaty that everybody else pulled out of. And not allow inspectors on site at a time when Israel has already threatened to blow it to smithereens. I mean, just, why would they? I mean, why, it's one of those, to move over to the Ukraine thing.
Oh yeah. I was hoping you were going to go this direction.
The missiles, the missiles that shot the Russian strategic bombers, which, I mean, let's face it, it's not that big a deal. I mean, there were propeller planes. All right, we haven't had
they're not even in
propeller planes from. We haven't had strategic bomber propeller planes since the early 1950s. Okay, they with the B-36, but they were only on the tarmac because of a treaty that the United States pulled out of. And guess what? They're not going to be on the tarmac anymore. Okay, there's no reason to comply and make yourself more susceptible to attack to a treaty that you are no longer a party to, and the other party is not following. So I don't fault Iran for that, but that is being used as a propaganda point. Oh, well, they're not complying with inspections. Yeah. You know why? because Israel is already trying to blow them up. I mean, of course. I mean, if they had reasonable guarantees of security, they would be.
And it's crazy too, because it's like if you look at and I'm pretty sure and Mark might even be able to add a little bit, but in the comments here, but I'm pretty sure it was the START II treaty that the U.S. and Russia had kind of been a part of, and then the U.S. comes out of it, and I'm pretty sure Russia also left it, but they still abided by the guidelines, and so. It's like there was this act of good faith, but then it's like people are shocked, like if somebody does, like, oh, how dare you? Like, even though like we still loosely abide by the guidelines because our B-2s are out and your bombers are out, like, how dare you change your disposition? Like, you're so terrible. And it's like, yeah, but like what did you think the reaction was going to be? Like, where is the incentive? Like, it was genuinely only an act of good faith, and that's all that you were extended, and now you've destroyed that. And so
plus, it's one of those, they maintain plausible deniability. It's like, oh, it had nothing to do with us. We weren't attacking your bombers. And it's like, those were American missiles targeted by CIA officers. They can say it was all the Ukrainian security people. Yeah. But I mean, they were, there was a CIA officers speaking to them in Ukrainian saying, no, move the lever to the left. No, that one up to the right. Yes. And push the blue button. No, the blue button, that's how, that's what it was like. And they're like, we didn't do it. No, that's not even close. I mean, but that's what we were expected. That's what we're expected to do. Right. I mean, we're basically told we have to believe the spies, right? I mean, believe the spies. Like, Iran has a nuclear program. Why believe the spies? Yeah. All right. It's the CIA and everybody else. Believe them, even though they're privately telling the opposite to them. And Trump is a Russian agent. Why believe the spies?
We've got to believe the spies. Trust the plan, Tom.
Yeah. And the coronavirus was created in a wet market because Chinese people are savages who eat bat soup. All right. And if you think it was made in a lab funded by the United States, well, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're probably a racist too, for not believing that it was made by bat soup. And and you just go down go back to Iraq 1, where they said, oh, we just have to believe the spies. And of course the spies lie. It just reminds me of one of the great Tom Clancy movies was Clear and Present Danger. It was probably the best example of how conspiracies could work in the real world and do work in the real world, right? It was a president got involved in an illegal war, and the drug dealer had I don't want to ruin I'm not going to ruin the movie, but there's a line in there where he had a Cuban intelligence official on his staff, and he had met Jack Ryan, and he goes, this is my, the drug dealer says, this is my new friend, Dr. Ryan. He goes, he's in the CIA. He's in the intelligence business. They lie for a living. And the drug dealer goes back to him, you're in the intelligence business. And they both lie for a living. I mean, in the original Tom Clancy novels, Jack Ryan was the good guy. It was an act of exceptional fiction. The remake on Amazon, the Jack Ryan series, it's more realistic because Jack Ryan is the bad guy. If you watched any of the Jack Ryan series with John Krasinski, it's well made. It's well made.
It looks really well made.
And the first season wasn't bad. The second season, they did a political flip, but Jack Ryan is the bad guy. If you were looking at it from any perspective other than America's always right, he's absolutely the bad guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress.
Well, yeah, I just have to kind of add to that too. Like when you examine like CIA or MI6 or anything like that, like I think MI6 gets away with, they get a little bit more of the limelight, and I do think that they were definitely in terms of being active in the drone strikes and all of that as it pertains to Ukraine. But I mean, we have to trust the British because they have that aristocratic, like suave, English tonality with them, and so we have to believe them, Tom, because if we don't believe them, then my goodness, like we are forsaking the best people in the world, and they're right all the time. And it's that suave accent that just makes everything okay. Like the Americans were a little rough, we kind of say what we think, but those MI6 guys, man, we have to, everything that they say is exactly right. we have gin and James Bond is what Gene said.
Indeed, we do. Except James Bond drinks vodka martinis, not gin martinis. You know, there you go.
Boy.
So,
Gene, you're from across the pond. You have to provide a report at this point. But
no,
yeah,
you know, I'm right about that. Although, you know, they do have gin. Gin is the ultimate English drink for sure.
That is, yeah, it's, but you know, it just, I do want to take just a second to kind of beat the propaganda thing, because I actually love to, I love to talk about propaganda, and it's amazing when you look, especially at like the Ukraine and Russia conflagration, how heavy they went into it, like the first to second year, and they really were getting after it. And you almost saw like the old throwback posters, and you like, it became very reminiscent of how propagandized like World War II was, and just the zeal. And then it's like somewhere along the line, it like just flatlined. And they're just like, yeah, nobody's buying this anymore. So we're just going to be honest with them. Like, yeah, we're still selling a bunch of weapons to Ukraine while we're trying to negotiate a sense of peace. And even though that doesn't make us a neutral party in this, we can still be trusted, because take our word for it, we're preserving peace in the world. It's like, I don't think that's how that works. That's like, you know, that's like giving your neighbor a firearm during a confrontation with another neighbor and being like, no, seriously, like, Bob, John isn't okay. John's not going to come over here and shoot you. I'm here to make sure that happens. Well, meanwhile, you're giving John the firearm, right, and being like, all right, just in case, you know, just in case.
We're not the good guys. I mean, like, let me. I don't want to get Gene from across the pond too mad. You know, I'm going to take a swipe at the British, but I am going, you know, and, you know, I'm going to take a swipe at the old British Empire, because, you know, one of the things that we love to say especially conservatives, we love to say, oh, well, we loved our Western culture. But, you know, if you look at Western culture, the only good thing about Western culture was the limitations put on government.
Yeah.
By checks and balances, and it starts with the British system. So I said something good about Britain, but I'm gonna go on.
There's your one. The British Empire. Your one for the night, Gene.
Yeah, I know. So drink the Bombay gin quick before I start going after the British Empire. No, but I mean, the British Empire just created devastation around the world, and you know, hundreds of wars, and now they're not so bad. They're still bad, but we're the bad guys. America is the one that's creating devastation all around the world, because we're the ones funding all of these crazy wars.
It's in the name of democracy, though, Tom. So it's okay. It excuses us from everything. We are bringing endless amounts of freedom to people who didn't even want it. Okay. Yeah. And maybe taking their oil.
We literally are, as Gene from across the pond said, Team America World Police. You know, I mean, if you've seen the beginning of that movie where they destroy everything in Paris, I mean, that's America's take on every single country we go to. Look at what happened in Libya. Look what happened in Syria. You know, we just destroy the countries that we go to.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, and in defense of Britain, I mean, they kind of destroyed most of the countries, but some of them turned out okay. All right. You know, the United States, despite a lot of bloodshed, turned out okay. Australia turned out okay. Most of the British world empire at least did better than the French. All right. At least they did better than the Spanish and the Portuguese and the Dutch. All right. Well, I guess we could say that. The Belgians, they really screwed up the Congo. I mean, it's still screwed up because of the Belgium. And the Germans, same deal. Okay. I mean, but at least some of their countries survived. I mean, but colonialism was bad, and it's still bad when America is, you know, we don't claim other countries as part of our empire, but if they're not America-friendly leaders, we take them out. And it doesn't matter whether they're democracies or dictatorships. We don't care.
We can't stand the fact that you're not with us.
Yeah, in Egypt, they finally got sick of the U.S. dictator Hosni Mubarak in 2012, and then they elected Mohammed Morsi in 2013, and he was kind of a moderate guy. I know he was part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's everybody wants to turn that into some evil terrorist organization, but all they really, to the extent that they did terrorism, they just tried to get the British out of their country, which in any other circumstance we would call patriotism. And he had a very moderate view of, I want peaceful relations with Israel. I mean, he wasn't in Israel's pocket, and we got him out. Yep. And, of course, one of the things we got him out is like, but he was going to massacre civilians. I mean, that was the same thing with Muammar Gaddafi too, right?
Yeah.
He killed 30 or 40 people, protesters, which was a CIA op. And then afterwards, what did we do? We put in General al-Sisi, who was an American trained. He went to the Army, I think it was the Army War College, whatever. He was trained in the United States and almost certainly recruited by the CIA here. And he became a CIA puppet, and we put him in as our dictator. And what did he do? The first thing he did, any protest, I'm going to kill him. And resume torture and all of the bad things under the Mubarak dictatorship. And he's our puppet. And everybody says, oh, he's a great guy. He's a moderate Muslim. He's not. He's a puppet. And that's what we do all across the world. And we create chaos. We're not a team. We're not a team. We're a chemical mixture that creates chaos across the world. And we do it in the name of security, but it doesn't create security. And it creates waves of immigration that Trump complains about. And it creates terrorism because, let's face it, you kill someone's family, they're going to probably want to go after you. You kill someone's countrymen, they're probably going to be mad about it. And that's that, we saw that in, what was it, New Orleans a couple weeks ago with the guy with the flamethrower. Was it New Orleans?
I think so. I think it was.
I didn't follow it that much. I don't watch the legacy media, so I don't know about these little details. But there was a guy with a flamethrower that injured more than a dozen people, I think.
Oh, and Molotov too, I think.
And Molotov cocktails too. Yeah. So
and I was just listening to it was aired yesterday, but it was a segment with Judge Andrew Napolitano. And again, I like what he does because he has a lot of good guests on, and I think he brings to light a lot of really good conversations. Don't always necessarily agree, but I think he's one of the better ones. That being said, they had mentioned, I had a tonal shift there. I said, I added a Slavic charm, hit. I don't know why. I notice that crap whenever I'm talking, and I'm just like, it's all right, But one of his guests, and it might have been McGregor, Colonel Douglas McGregor, or I think he had Max Blumenthal on. I don't remember which one, but they basically said, like, you can't. If you expect to have a policy of like a foreign policy to where it's just like, oh, like we're negotiating, except you have to accept our terms or we will bomb the crap out of you. It's like, okay, but like that's not how you properly negotiate. Like you're not even being diplomatic. And two, you're basically bullying people to do what you want them to do, or you're just going to wage war on their country, eviscerate their entire country, say you did it in the name of freedom, and then tell those people that you just bombed the crap out of, like how free they are now. And it's like they put this spin on, like it's not even a big deal. And it's like that's not even like even remotely close to good foreign policy. But like if you had said, like if you expect to get anything but a negative reaction from the people that you just like gone in and decimated their country, and then you step back and you're like, gee, I wonder why they don't like us. Like we saved their country after decimating their towns and their cities and their government apparatus. Like they're so ungrateful. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it works. And when you look at and I only pick this out because it's one I follow a little bit more than the Middle East. But like when you look at like how they're trying to deal with Putin, I think they're having a hard time because like he doesn't deal with it. Like he just flat out just doesn't deal. He's like, all right, like hey, refocus, like we're talking here. Okay. So like either you're going to stay on task or we're just going to continue doing what we're doing. And when you finally decide to like come back to the table, we'll be right here. And it's crazy because they think that they can just go and push everybody around without any ramifications, or like they're going to be hailed as these great, freedom spreaders or these great diplomats. But there is no diplomacy. Our foreign policy doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't even have any real sentiment of true diplomacy or true statesmanship. What it is you're either appeasing or you're bombing somebody. And we've gotten in so much trouble with that, whether it's over in Eastern Europe, whether it's in the Middle East. The Middle East has a horrible track record of that, but I digress. But it's so blatant, Tom. And it is amazing to me that you still have people that are so persuaded and convinced by people like Lindsey Graham, or you have people that actually believe this whole trust the plan system, to where it's just like, oh, like everything's going to work out. Trump he's going to come in here and he's going to change the tide. It's like, okay, but like not only has it not happened, it's gone. They don't even have a consistent foreign policy. You and I could wake up tomorrow and everything's changed again. And then we wake up the next day and everything's changed again. It's an absolute shit show, if I may say.
It is. And Trump has definitely, I mean, if you listen to some of the things he says, especially on foreign policy, most of them are pretty good. I mean, most of the things he says are pretty good.
Sounds great.
I don't want war. Biden is an idiot for bombing Yemen. Then he becomes president. And what is the first thing he does? He bombs Yemen. I mean, it's just, where do you go with that?
I don't like war, but I'm going to throw some bombs over here.
Only idiots bomb Yemen. Guess what? I'm going to bomb Yemen. And that's where we're at. And in the very end, we're going through these no kings protests. What America sinks is kings, but satraps. We want someone like General al-Sisi, who is a local warlord who's going to do America's bidding. That's what we want. Yeah. If you go across the Middle East, we always assume, well, if the leader isn't totally loyal to America, we're going to go and ruin the country, and we'll find someone who's better. And what we found is none of them are better. Yeah. None of them. I mean, you go to Iraq. I mean, basically
Syria is a great example of that.
Syria. Yeah. I mean, Iraq is basically under Iran's control now. Thank you. Yeah. Iran basically says, Syria, Libya. I mean, you could go on and on. All we do when we overturn governments is we make them worse. And at least in the British Empire's case, they created some kind of law occasionally. I mean, they didn't do so well in Africa, but they did a little better in other parts of the world. America is, I mean, the only cases for a success for America you could give is 1945, Germany and Japan. We did okay then. But that wasn't Washington. That was, in the case of Japan, it was MacArthur, and in the case of Germany, they happened to have Konrad Adenauer. If those guys hadn't existed, they would have been crap shows too. I
kind of want to start to bow tie this a little bit, because we are at the 2-hour mark. Unless you have the duration in you, but I do want to kind of bring it to some degree, because I want to bring it over to the no kings thing, just because I do find a great irony in that statement, to where it's just like, oh, no kings, like we don't want kings. But then it's like, these are the same people who really yearn to be mean to be ruled by kings. Like they don't want any responsibility. They want to just be told how they're supposed to live, what they're supposed to do. They want the handouts from the government. And it's like, okay, but like,
they cheered Biden for giving all the student loans on by himself, without any congressional authority.
And it's like you say that, but it's like you don't. This is how I know they fundamentally, like it's a total, just like, by and large, I'll put my opinion on this, okay? And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll own that. But by and large, most of these people don't even give two craps about about the saying or anything that's going on. They are most likely going to be paid to be there. They're not invested in the movement at all. They're not because it's so nonsensical, it's so hypocritical, it's so ironic that you can't possibly say no kings, but then consistently sit there and ask for all of these things and to be treated like a serf, or a peasant or anything like that. Like, no responsibility whatsoever. And then you have the demographic of people that genuinely actually believe it, which I'm not going to sit here and detract from their intellect, of course, but I think that there's a real disconnect, and it's like, you and I understand like what the realm of like that king style disposition is, and the opposite of that, to where there's individual liberty, there's freedom, there's self-governance, personal responsibility, and how that tends to be a more favorable way, albeit a little bit more difficult. And it's like, when you look at the way that these people act, I mean, I don't see how this is not manufactured, because I think even some of the dimmest people in the world would be able to figure out that that's a very contradictory statement when you look at what their list of demands are.
I don't know if they see, that's the thing. I
don't know
that they are able to think it out because of the propaganda level. I mean, like, these are the people that watch CNN. These are the people that watch MSNBC. And they're the same people who are outraged under the first Trump administration that, I can't believe Trump is putting children in cages. Well, who do you think built those cages and put children in them? It was Obama, right? And then in 2025, they're like, I can't believe Trump is having ICE people raid businesses and homes. Well, what do you think Biden was doing all throughout his presidency? He was doing the exact same thing. I mean, there's certain things that Trump is doing that is different.
Yes.
He's going after some legal immigrants who are, happen to write op-eds, and a lot of the ICE people are wearing masks, which they shouldn't be doing. But almost everything they are protesting, they were just fine with under Obama and Biden. And that's really the problem, because they didn't know about it, and then the media told them about it. And now, like, I'm outraged at that. Because the media told them to be outraged at Republicans. That's really all it is. I mean, they were outraged about Trump being a Russian agent, even though there was never anything to it. Right. And this, and they still are not unaware of the Durham report saying it was entirely a fiction of the Hillary Clinton campaign and a few people inside the CIA. If you ask them, they still do not know, because they haven't been told by CNN and they haven't been told by MSNBC.
And I think that attitude and disposition isn't just pervasive for domestic issues. It's kind of going back slightly to whether it's Israel, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's or Russia or Iran. Like, there's all of these just crafted, like, again, I can't emphasize it enough, just like heavily propagandized. And when you have several generations that have just grown up in nothing but constant bombarding propaganda, I mean, it's been bad. And, it's like, it's not far beyond the scope to where I think you're right. And I think it can really apply to a pretty broad spectrum of issues, and not just domestic issues. And which is why I think you still have people that are just wholly convinced that, like, you could literally have the mowing down of an entire group of people, just the absolute slaughter. And all it takes is like the right line to be said. And people are just like, no, but this is fine, because it's like, it's for freedom. We're defending our interests, or we're doing this, or we're whatever the case is. And they don't think twice, because it may really be all they know. And if they, like you said, if they don't hear any different from CNN and I'll even throw Fox News, because it hits every spectrum, right? Like, in my opinion, you have people that are just as lunatic oriented or fanatical on the right as you do the left. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people just, they don't like to admit, but it exists. And it's like, okay. And especially for the right, pertaining to like a lot of the MAGA people, is like, okay, like you keep saying that you're America first, but every single thing that you're advocating for right now is the exact antithesis pertaining to like foreign policy or whatever the case. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, make it make sense. And they can't provide you a logical explanation beyond the talking points that they get from Fox News or for, as the left is concerned.
It's funny you said MAGA people. I pictured that in my head, like Sharia, you know, like MAGA apostrophe A, because it is sort of like that, you know. It is sort of like,
or
hey,
MAGA.
we must follow the MAGA law, right?
Yeah, no, it is crazy though, because like it's become these are the same individuals too. And I'm not saying this is every single person, right? Because 100%, I would love something that genuinely puts America first in a position to where we can actually thrive and you know, build ourselves up as a country again. But you have just as I would say a pretty large swath and demographic of people that follow this cult-like behavior to the T, like trust the plan, like they would give their firstborn child over to the politicians for sacrifice if they figured that it was going to further the plan, just as much as many of the people on the left would. And a lot of these people would never admit it. They would fight you to the very end. They'd say, I'm not like those people, except the problem is when you look in the mirror in the morning, you have to convince yourself that, you know, like, I'm on the right side of history. When that day you'll show up at a protest, you'll protest the other side, but you think you're saying something different, but you're actually saying the same thing, except it's your team that you want to impose on the other side. And it just, the tribalism is just insane. And so, and I really think
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Red Sox versus Yankees,
100%.
Packers versus Vikings, you know, that's what it is.
Yeah. And it just like, it's gutted like any sense of like morality or empathy to a point to where it's like we see like atrocities happen in areas of the world, and we just don't even think about it anymore. It's like, oh, like it's okay. Like 60,000 women and children have just been completely eliminated and decimated off the face of the earth, but it's okay because we happen to like these people and they're justified in doing it for whatever excuse. And it's like, okay, like, are you sure about that?
And when that happens, the media says, well, it's excusable because there were terrorists hiding underneath every building in Gaza that was bombed, even though every building in Gaza was bombed. Yeah. But let's face it, if an Iranian missile takes out Mossad headquarters, and by the way, Mossad headquarters is literally under a civilian area. Yeah. They're going to say, we can't believe Iran took out civilian.
That's what they would
civilians. They, you know, they killed these civilians. They pulled a child out of that rubble. They, you know, I mean, that's the narrative. They're not going to say, well, the Mossad was, you know, 3 stories underneath, and that's the bomb also took out the Mossad. They're going to say, they pulled a child out of that rubble. The Iranians are heartless people. You know, I mean, that's going to be the narrative. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, you know, I think anybody that has like any real sense of a moral compass or empathy, like, you can't help but to look at some of these, in you see it over in the, even with Ukraine, and even, well, there's a number of African states that are warring again pretty heavily. And it's like, dude, like, you know, like, how does somebody look at just like all of the innocent people that are caught in the middle and be like, no, this is fine. Like, this is okay. Like, there's clearly no problem here. You know, and you'll have some people that go in so far as being like, no, they're subhuman scum. They don't count as human beings. Like, it's not a big deal. And I just don't get that, you know? And then it's like, they try to justify it, or they go in so far as being like, yeah, but I'm pro liberty. It's like, that you're not. Like, that's not.
Yeah,
that's not.
There's a huge campaign, especially to demonize Muslims. I mean, because it's in Israel's interest, right? The narrative is the only place Christians can safely worship is in Israel. Well, actually, Christians are persecuted in Israel, and actually, there's a lot of places in the Middle East where they're just fine. You know, I mean, there's an occasional, you know, pogrom or whatever, but for the most part, they're safe. I mean, there's 8 million or 9 million Christians in Egypt, and most of the time they're fine. And that didn't matter. And it didn't matter whether they were under the Muslim Brotherhood, under Morsi or al-Sisi today, or before that Mubarak. It's just, the narrative is, well, Muslims are savages. And why? Because they're against Israel, supposedly, you know, and I think it's, you know, we engage in religious collectivism and racial collectivism way too much. People are individuals, and, you know, everyone's got that spark of God in them. Not, although sometimes it's hard to believe with many of these politicians, you know, but you know, a lot of people have been, you know, like the China threat, you know, people are saying, oh, we can't have all these Chinese come over. I'm like, we've had Chinese in America since the 1850s. And, you know, they've brought a lot to this country that, you know, I mean, just leaving stupid little things like Bing cherries, you know, Bing created a brand of cherry, you know, I mean, like, just stupid little things. I mean, all right. Yeah. They've done some big things too. And, you know, the food is great. And, even though a lot of it's Chinese American, but, there's like, my brother married a Chinese woman, and he said, you know, you can always tell a good Chinese food restaurant if there's a lot of Asians in it. And it's kind of true. I actually look I go to a Chinese restaurant now, and I'm like, are there enough Asians for me to eat here? Because it's probably bad if there aren't. You know?
and I'm pretty sure we've if it wasn't the conversation before, there's a good chance that there might be a shadow ban now. Look, I'm here to tell you, like, in the end of the day, I am so unconcerned with the idea of like, you know, just it being like, oh, if you're shadow, it's like, dude, like, the people that know I exist they will find a way. They know the schedule for the most part. I try to that's why I always say, like, if you want to know the schedule, I do the best I can to put it on Instagram, because look, there's probably a number of topics at this point that has got me probably not in the good graces of YouTube. And that,
well, sorry if that's, you know, like, my whole comment was made to defend Chinese people and Muslims.
It's great. And you know, and the thing of it is like, it's great discourse, because in the end of the day, like, these are the quips and the moments that, like, we should be able to have without, you know, having to worry about, like, censorship. And it's, you know, and being, and even further than that, to kind of bring it back to a little bit more of a serious tone, it's like, we should be able to sell to who we want to sell to be able to have an opinion on what we want to have an opinion on, to be able to associate with who we want to associate with, et cetera, et cetera. And you know, and I know we're kind of getting into a different section here, but it becomes a situation to where we have slowly but surely started to see literally almost the criminalization, to where it's like, you can't say things. You know, at first, you know, a couple of years ago, it was like, you can't overtly criticize Ukraine, and they didn't get super legal with it, but there were some really sketchy points in the very first year or two, where Ukraine had their lists of Americans that they had threatened that they wanted to deal with or get rid of. But at the same time, you know, they also had their dissatisfaction. They tried pushing to censor any criticism, which to some degree they did have a variety of effects. But now we're starting to also see this with Israel. And my other concern too is, like, at what point, like, even beyond those two, like, at what point is that going to occur with any other country, right? Like, at what point are you going to be able to not criticize a different country down the road? Like, this sets a very dangerous precedent. And even more, what it also sets is, like, domestically, like, how much farther down that rabbit hole are we going to get domestically, to where it's like, if you say so, I could see it. If you say something against the president, you're going to go to jail for X amount of years because we don't like what you said. And I feel like it becomes a very slippery slope when you start looking at the behavior and the controlling. And I think the thing that really makes me like get into this realm of disgust is we have people from foreign countries coming over in like demanding, like, do not let these people say these things about us. And then we have congressmen that are just like, oh, all right, we'll get right on that. It's like, no, like,
yeah,
that's not, as Americans, that is not how that works here. And you are an absolute, I'll use one of my favorite words. You're an absolute like monster and degenerate of a congressman. If that's your belief, that you put those individuals or that country or that group ahead of the people that your constituency of who you're supposed to represent, which, by the way, in your job description is also to uphold the rights and liberties of those people. So it's like, whose side are you on? And it's, yeah, I don't know if you want to take that, like, because I could just get really frustrated about that at this point, but it's frustrating, man.
Yeah. No, I don't know where to take that. I mean, there are certain things you can't say. I mean, I was surprised. Toward the end of my teaching career, as I was, we were in with the principal and a bunch of people, and the principal said, one of the things I'm not going to stand for is, anyone saying the word retard. And I'm like, really? I mean, like, it's not in my vocabulary. I don't say it. I never did say it, but I mean, really, that's it. And I don't know. I still remember as a kid, learning that, true story. I remember.
You heard it here first, folks.
No. All right. Here's the thing. Like, back in, like when I was a kid, back in the early 70s, like elementary school, they were mainstreaming a lot of the kids with, moderate retardation, moderate and mental disabilities, whatever they call it. And, I remember saying, oh, he's an imbecile, he's an idiot, or something like that. I mean, that was the term. And then one of the teachers said to me, no, Tommy, we don't do that. We don't say that. He's not an imbecile. He's not an idiot. He's just retarded. I'm like, what does that mean? What does that mean? He goes, well, it just means he's learning a little slower than you. He's learning at his own pace. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I kind of got that. Yeah. That was the term that replaced the other pejoratives. Well, I mean, they'll come up with another term, and those will become pejoratives eventually anyway. I actually created a little skit about my hearing it, like a fictionalized skit about that, but I'll tell it some other time. Yeah. But I mean, I during the early 70s, that was the new term that people used. That was the non-pejorative. So I was kind of surprised that by the late 2010s, you weren't even allowed to use it because it was a clinical term. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. And you bring up pejoratives, and boy, do some people really not understand the concept of pejoratives, especially when it's a self-placed pejorative, and they're just like, oh, you can't say that, or that makes you a Nazi, or that makes you like an anti this type of person. It's like, yeah, but like, you were the ones that called yourself, like, and it became socially acceptable, and now you're trying to make it out to be this other thing, which clearly it never was. And it's like, no, like, I'm sorry, like, you started this, and now it's not gonna, like, it's just gonna exist. Like, it's kind of like the internet, it's like, once it's there, it never leaves. And any rate, there's so much. I feel like there's so much more we could go down, but I kind of want to bow tie this. And if you have a little bit of time, I'd like to chat with you a little bit after the podcast.
Speaking of it, once it's on the internet, it's out there forever. We can't do the podcast forever. So we should probably kind of tie it up. Yeah, exactly. So Tom, I
really, really appreciate you coming out tonight and doing this podcast with me. I think it was a great episode. We covered a myriad of different topics. I hope everybody had a good time. And, as always, if you have any other questions, comments, or anything like that, please feel free to leave them down in the comments post the live. And I will, if you have any questions for Tom, I'll try, if he's all right with it, I will try and forward those on and get an answer, or he could stop on and answer those too. Whatever happens first. But yeah, thank you, Tom. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on here and kind of shoot the shit and talk about different topics tonight, man.
Yeah, no worries.
So
thank you.
I just want to go through a couple different comments here. It looks like Paul came in a little bit late. I appreciate you stopping in, Paul. I really appreciate everybody who takes the time to stop in and support this, the Sentinels of Liberty and the podcast. I can't do it without any of you guys and gals. And, it really helps kind of keep everything going in a good forward momentous direction. So, really you guys and gals are the ones that really make it not only worthwhile, but you keep things going. So I really appreciate everybody taking some time out of their evenings, their days, time away from your family, whatever the case is, and spending it with us, because it does mean a lot. And I believe that these are important subjects, whether you agree with us, you disagree with us, or it's somewhere in the middle. I believe that proper discourse is one of the most effective ways to help kind of find a way forward. It all starts with a conversation, but now how do we take some of what we talked about and move forward into action? That looks differently for everybody. But I would encourage everybody to keep learning, keep learning new things, accruing new skills, connecting with people in your community, finding a group that's worth your time, getting involved at the local level or the state level, whatever you feel is best and the most effective. So thank you very much. And without further ado, look, carry that torch of liberty with you. Support your community. Treat people right. Be a good individual to others, to your family, and be the difference you want to see. Because in the end of the day, like, nobody else is going to be able to do for you necessarily what you can do for yourself. And I believe that as long as we follow a course that is lit by liberty, is filled with self-governance and personal responsibility, we can't be beaten. It's something that's very hard to overcome. So don't give up hope, keep moving, and we'll see you on the next episode of Sentinels of Liberty next Saturday at 1700 Central Daylight Time. And I will have an update on what that episode is going to be on my Instagram. I will put that down below. Thank you, everybody, for stopping in, and have a great rest of your evening.